This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema.
Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and film critic, and today I am going to be looking back on the year, and it's an unusual episode obviously because I'm on my own and I'm talking to myself, but really I'm talking to you. I just have to get used to the fact that I haven't got somebody else who is an expert who can cover for my mistakes and make me feel better, and make the listener, you the listener, feel much more like they're learning something. But I thought it'd be interesting to put some old episodes up over the next few days during the Christmas break, because it's not really fair on writers who've worked hard on books to release an episode of their interviews during a holiday break where people might not be listening to the podcasts as regularly as they do, and then they find that their episode is a little bit buried in the festive cheer. So I'm going to hold on to a few episodes and put them out later on in the year, and also closer to publication dates as well, so that those episodes get the audience they really deserve. First of all, I really wanted to do a review of the year from the point of view of film books. We've had some really great memoirs, first of all. I've been reading Abel Ferrara's Scene, which is an amazing document. It's actually, I'm listening to it on Audible, which I would recommend for most film books, which are memoirs by actors or directors. Oliver Stone's memoir, for instance, is really a really good listen with his voice. He's a perfect narrator. Generally speaking, the best directors, in my experience, are those who are storytellers, and so they are natural raconteurs. People like Orson Welles is perhaps the most extreme example of that, but anybody who's had the experience of listening to William Friedkin as well will know that interviewing somebody like William Friedkin, you only really need 2 or 3 questions because he will just riff, he will just go. I was present at a press conference, several press conferences in which Friedkin just went his own way, and he kept the room entertained to the point that nobody really cared about the fact that they weren't getting to ask any questions. When he was introducing Sorcerer spoke for so long that there was a sense that they had to at one point tell him there were other films programmed for later in the evening, and they were going to have to cut short his speech if they were going to have time to show the film in its renewed format. And so that was those are prime examples, and Abel Ferrara is one of those raconteurs. He's got his own voice. He's a really strong voice, and he's got his own point of view, his own opinion, and he doesn't dumb it down either. You get a real sense of a working director. He's somebody who's been through the fires, so to speak, of addiction, and he doesn't pull any punches. His own family background is very interesting, working class, sort of semi criminal in some ways. I had the opportunity of interviewing him about a year ago. I think about a year and a half ago, I talked to him in Taormina. He was there doing some sort of masterclass. It was a bit of a chaotic festival, Taormina, and I was interviewing him, and I was asking him, well, where are you more comfortable? Because we were improvising the interview a little bit between breakfast and him starting this masterclass, and he asked me, is this a video or what sort of interview is it? And I said, no, it's just for print. I'm just and he said, well then what do you care where I stand? Stop making my balls, let's get on with it. And that was kind of funny. It was kind of the most Ferrara introduction to the interview you could possibly have. So his book is amazing and really, really worth a read. And I would, as I say, perhaps suggest a listen would be better. On the other hand, Anthony Hopkins' memoir is a good book, and I listened to the audio version of this one too, but it's not narrated by Hopkins, it's narrated by Kenneth Branagh, who does this sort of impersonation of Hopkins, which is somewhat irritating. Sometimes it's spot on, he'll do a sort of, Hopkins's prose style has this very clipped, I was there, I did the thing, I did it well. And so he has the, talking very, very neatly in short sentences. Okay then. And emphasising the end of words, the way so many Welsh actors do. Burton is another one who, if you listen to him closely, he's always emphasising the end of the word. But with Branagh, it feels, he's always got that Branagh-esqueness. I don't think there's an actor that I dislike more, and I don't dislike him on a personal level, I just mean purely in terms of his work. He's the sort of actor I'm always aware of as acting. He's the supreme lovey. And the Anthony Hopkins biography, the memoir, is incredibly honest and interesting and really hard-hitting. I mean, Hopkins is essentially a very depressive character. He's very gloomy. His philosophy of the world is very dour. He is dealing with, again, like Abel Ferrara, he deals with addiction, but instead of it being some sort of joie de vivre, or some sort of exaggerated wild man, hell-raising feeling. It's a misanthropic, sit at the end of the bar, drink booze and get angry with everybody around you. He's not the life and soul of parties. He's the person who becomes belligerent and sour, and in that sense, there's a lot of that in it. He's been sober for many, many years, so this is a redeeming narrative. There is a redemption arc to it, and he works out to some degree how to have a happy life, and he works out some of the problems that he had as a young man and as a person growing up and maturing. And it is great seeing him come up through the years and through various achievements and sort of becoming aware of his own talent and able to exploit it to its fullest. And also, of course, the people he meets along the way and who are able to get the best of his talent, people like Jonathan Demme and David Lynch, Laurence Olivier. These are some of the primary movers. I think there's a great little story of Mickey Rourke sort of manhandling him during the making of Michael Cimino's Desperate Hours, and him saying to Mickey Rourke, you do that again, I'll smash your face into the back of your head. And I just think that's, okay, there we have it. There's Hopkins in his glory days, having a pop at one of those, the up and coming kids who probably at that time felt he was untouchable. It was a moment where he was just about to burn out. The latter part of his career isn't covered as much. I mean, it's obviously he's more interested in the source and where everything comes from, when he was drinking the source, for instance. So that is to some degree, I think you could have had a little bit more of that era, but it's great to be reminded of some of those. The World's Fastest Indian, for instance, is a film that he mentions making, and I think that's an underrated film that deserves a little bit more love, really. So Hopkins he's a strange actor in that he really came to prominence kind of late on in his career, when with Hannibal Lecter and Silence of the Lambs, when he had a career behind him as a character actor, and then he suddenly found himself having the power to greenlight movies if he was in them. He was a name that was big enough to sell some tickets. And some of those performances in the latter part of his career, Howard's End, Remains of the Day. I mean, he was a really, really interesting presence. And most recently, The Father, I think, is one of those performances that absolutely wrecked me. But this is a great book. I was really interested in it. And the bonus in the audio edition of this is that there are 40 minutes at the end where it's Hopkins himself reading some of the poems which he loved to memorize and recite, and that to me was sort of like where you just thought, oh God, I wish he narrated the whole thing rather than his friend Kenneth Branagh sort of sitting in and doing it for him and doing a sort of, to my mind, a pale imitation of the master. But those are two books that, for obvious reasons, we haven't had the authors on Writers on Film, but that I wanted to bring up. Other highlights of the... I'm very cautious about doing a sort of highlights reel, if you like, of the season, the year that we've had, because we don't really do seasons on Writers on Film. It's always... it's continuous, we're doing the films, we're doing it every week an episode, but we've had some great guests, and I just wanted to point out some of these. I think one of my personal highlights has to have been Walter Murch, who came out with one of the best books this year, Suddenly Something Clicked, which was a memoir, a how-to-do book, a meditation on the process of filmmaking, editing, and sound design. It was really interesting, and it's part of an ongoing series of books that he's hoping to write, which will demonstrate and sort of construct to some degree a theory around what he's doing. He's not just doing something by instinct, or if he is doing it by instinct, he wants to find out what's behind that instinct and what informs it. And he had this idea while he was doing it of putting sort of QR codes in the book, which you can, photograph with your phone, or put your camera of your phone on, and it will show you the clip. It will take you to a video which will illustrate the point he's making in the book. And I just think this is it's a typically innovative idea from Murch of how to write about film in a way which involves you and is interactive. So that was superb. That was one of the great guests that I had. Another wonderful guest is someone I really enjoyed talking to, and has since sort of become someone that I sort of regularly talk to now, is David Thompson, who came onto the podcast to talk about his career, essentially, and we got into the joy of watching movies in general. He's one of these writers. This is obviously the author of books like Suspects, The Big Screen, How to Watch a Movie, and the biographical dictionary of film, which has gone through several editions, all of which it's so worth dipping into, and it's one of those books that you just find yourself constantly looking at. He's someone who makes the fact that he's got opinions. I like his opinions. I don't have to agree with all of them, and I like not agreeing with them, and I like the difference between my opinions and his opinions. There's a real dance to it, and there's a real pleasure in discovering what someone else's opinions are and how it works. So I really enjoyed talking to him. He was one of the people who I almost sort of never thought we'd get on the podcast. He's sort of one of those names to conjure with. Another such one is Christopher Frayling, who is a writer I've read ever since I've read books about film. I remember the first book about Sergio Leone that I read was Christopher Frayling's, and I also read his big book on spaghetti westerns. That's not the title of the book, but it might as well be. It felt like it. His biography of Sergio Leone was called Something to Do with Death, which again was a wonderful title. And he's a really clear-eyed writer about film. He knows his stuff, And I remember he was talking in this specific conversation that we had about Ennio Morricone's music to Once Upon a Time in the West, and he says, yeah, sometimes it's great, but sometimes it goes a little bit Mantovani. And I was like, oh God, how can you say that about the maestro? And yet at the same time, I know exactly what he means. And so it's great to have that those voices which are very, as I say, clear-eyed and have a certain courage to them. I often think as a critic, one of my many failings, is that I sort of feel reluctant to issue too negative a view of someone. I'm generally speaking going for the safe point of view. I'm generally very mid. As the kids say, and that's why it's great to talk to critics who have much more experience and much more courage. They have the courage of their convictions, and they prefer to be wrong and say something interesting than right, and always play it safe. And that's something Frayling. He's an expert, so he has a totally justified confidence, and he's kind of not going to be wrong, is he? Because he's read the receipts, he's done the research. So it's great stuff. I was really pleased to talk to him about his book on Sergio Leone. This is Leone on Leone. I'm going to talk to him in the new year about his new book, A Hollywood History of Art, which is out at the moment, and I'm looking forward to having a follow-up conversation with him on that. Another writer who I really enjoyed talking to, who you can listen to, we talked in February, was Jeff Dyer. And this is a different school of film writing, because this is a writer who's really not necessarily someone who... he's certainly not someone who exclusively writes upon film. I mean, he's a novelist and he's a memoirist. He's written a memoir called Home this year, which is well worth a read. And I love his two books, one on Where Eagles Dare, called Broadsword to Danny Boy, and Stalker, which I think the name of the book is The Zone. Or Zona, I think it might be Zona actually. And I just like the way he writes as a viewer of films and it's a sort of inexpert viewer. He's someone who can watch it. It's almost like observational comedy writing of films. And there's something of the Roger Lewis comic aspect, the incongruity of how films are made and how films are received comes through very well. We had several returning guests to the podcast over the space of the year. Tom Schoen came on and we spoke not only about his new book on Paul Greengrass, which the Greengrass Papers, which is a real discovery and well worth a read, and for a filmmaker who, despite his commercial success, is really not properly regarded, I feel, and this book does something to correct that. But also he spoke with me in January when we had just lost David Lynch, although it was one of those deaths which, although shocking, was not necessarily a surprise. Lynch had had health problems for quite some time, exacerbated by the wildfires and the reduction in air quality, which, dealt him a fatal blow, unfortunately. So I always love talking to Tom about anything and everything film, and we had a great discussion, and it felt like, in a very small way, we could pay tribute. We also got an opportunity, I also got an opportunity to talk once more to Patrick McGilligan, who has written a courageously fair biography of Woody Allen, which, A Travesty of a Mockery of a Sham is the amazing title. And it reveals a man who is possibly not guilty of the crimes that he has been convicted for in the media and on social media, but at the same time a very strange individual, and to some degree an elusive one, someone who we can't come to any definite conclusion, certainly not a reasonable conclusion, but it was. It's a really good conversation because it's a very knotty subject, and I think knotty subjects need to be talked about. We need to try to unknot them. The temptation to cut the Gordian knot with one fell slice of prejudice is to be resisted. We need to try to sort of reason things through and try to discuss them. And if that involves feeling unfortunately confused, then that's how it's going to go, and that's that. Another returning friend was Jason Bailey, who'd already come to the podcast to talk about his book on New York, Fun City Cinema, and now returned with a great biography of the wonderful James Gandolfini and the tragically foreshortened career of one of America's finest character actors, and that was a great conversation and a superb book. A new guest who I hadn't had the opportunity to talk to previously was Jonathan Rosenbaum, and here we have another of those sort of giants of film criticism who there was a bit of me is started to think that in a way Writers on Film has almost become like an archival project where I go around and have conversations with all these great voices from film criticism, and here's as one place where you can find them all, and that has sort of become, it's sort of beginning to collect as an archive of all these different voices that is available. And Jonathan was one of those voices that was missing, and he came on and he talked about his book, Travels in the Cities of Cinema, Conversations with Ehsan Khoshbakhsh, who, by the way, I spoke to in Bologna and I spoke to in Locarno. He's a superb programmer and curator of retrospectives, many retrospectives. And yeah, it's a great person to talk to, and something of a friend, I hope to say, in these days. Cannes was wonderful this year. It was a real classic, and I got the opportunity to talk to a lot of people, and I put out episodes that you can go back and listen to, in which I talked about some of the films that we were watching, with a range of critical voices who contributed to that, and that was a lot of fun. A lot of my favourite films I actually saw at Cannes this year, and I made some really good friends, including Thomas Flight, who is a YouTuber and essayist, video essayist on the film, and we talked separately from the episode that we did at Cannes about the future of cinema in a recent episode that you can go back to and listen to, and that was really good. I got a great opportunity to talk to a lot of people there, and I was really pleased with that. Of course, people will know that I'm devoted to the writer Roger Lewis. He's a superb biographer. It's a biographer of the life and death of Peter Sellers, and that had a reissue to commemorate the centenary of Peter Sellers, and that came out. I'm not sure if it was a centenary of Peter Sellers. There was some anniversary. It might have been the 25th anniversary of the publication of the book, actually. But anyway, it came out, and a new edition of the book came out, and we talked about it, and that is available. A book that also came out was my book on Jonathan Glazer, which is called Darkness Visible, the cinema of Jonathan Glazer. And to accompany the book, we did an episode per film, 4 episodes devoted to each one devoted to a film. David Thompson returned to talk about Birth, for instance. Tom Schoen talked about Sexy Beast, and it was a really good opportunity to have people have conversations about these films, which are, kind of, each one of them, I think, has the possibility of being proclaimed a masterpiece in its own way. So I was really pleased to to have that opportunity to talk to people, and hopefully, people will order the book, read the book. It's available from Sticking Place Books. It is the cheapest way of getting it is to order it directly from Sticking Place Books. You can Google that and the site will come up. If you order from there, it is available in Europe and in the US, so you can get it from any other place you prefer as well. It was a fun book to write. I really enjoyed revisiting his films. I think they're excellent, as you can imagine. I've already called them masterpieces. It was really interesting that I actually got to meet him after having finished the book, and I sent him a copy of the book. I've not had any reply yet, so I don't know if he'd read it or he appreciated it, but he certainly seemed tickled by the idea that someone had written a book about his work, and so that was a good thing. I met him at one of the many film festivals that I attend in my capacity as a journalist. I went to Karlovy Vary, Cannes Film Festival, Tromsø, in 200 miles into the Arctic Circle. That's the first film festival of the year that I usually attend. I shan't be going in 2026, unfortunately, because of academic duties which keep me in Italy. I will be going to Rotterdam this year. I will also be attending the Berlin Film Festival for the first time in person. I have attended Berlin before. I attended it during the COVID crisis, in which the edition was a digital one, and so I was able to watch films and write reviews from the comfort of my own home and do a couple of interviews as well. But this will be obviously much more satisfying to be in the city itself and to do a major European festival that I have hitherto not experienced. So I'm really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to Cannes this year. I'm hoping that Terrence Malick's new film will be released. There will be a certain movement as well with The Magic Hours, because we will have a French edition of the book coming out. We're just talking to the translator earlier this week about the possible translation of the title itself, because The Magic Hours doesn't really translate into French as clearly with the same sort of meaning that it does in English. So there are several alternatives there to consider. We also have an audio version of the book which will be released in 2026, and hopefully there will be a mass market paperback version of the book which will be at a more economical price and therefore more available and more widely distributed to bookstores, etc. And that will be hopefully that will be available also in 2026. So the afterlife of The Magic Hours continues. It got great write-ups in the New Yorker, the London Review of Books, and various other places. I was very pleased with the press coverage that it received. Sight and Sound, Time Out, the Empire gave it a 5-star review, as they also gave my subsequent book, Darkness Visible. As for my own writing ambitions in the next year, I am currently hard at work on a biography of Sean Connery, which is tentatively titled Connery the Biography, but might be another title on its way, depending on how we approach it, really, and how it goes. There have been a number of really good biographies of Connery, but there is a tendency to concentrate on his James Bond, that part of his career from 1962 to the early 70s, with obviously Never Say Never Again appearing as a blip in the middle of the 80s. And I wanted to look at his career and put a little bit more emphasis on the latter part of his career, where he was making films which are often dismissed, like Outland and Zardoz, films which I feel show a real range. Robert and Marion would be another one. Show a real range in his capabilities. And I also want to sort of he's one of these actors who, to some degree, is an auteur actor, in that every film he's in becomes a Sean Connery film rather than a film by, say, John Boorman or Sidney Lumet or one of the directors. He dominates films and takes them over with his iconic presence, and yet at the same time, he is a very careful, a very professional, and a very developed, wide-ranging actor. He obviously doesn't change his accent or his voice particularly for each performance, but he brings the characters towards him, so he can play very different parts and yet at the same time maintain a certain credibility because he retains this authenticity. Similarly to someone like Spencer Tracy or Humphrey Bogart, and therefore a kind of an actor who belongs much more to older traditions of Hollywood rather than the contemporaries that he was arriving alongside, such as Richard Burton and Michael Caine and people like that. Peter O'Toole, slightly earlier generation, just preceding him. So I'm really looking forward to getting that, taking that forward. But we're in very early stages. I'm in very early stages at the moment. Another before that comes out, I'm really looking forward to you seeing that. But it's at very early stages at the moment. But before that comes out, there is a really exciting book that's going to come out in February, which is Connery the Novel, which I wrote over the summer, and I'm very proud of this book and I can't wait for you to read it. It is a work of fiction. It is a book in some respects which is similar to Patricia Highsmith, I want to say. I'm gonna use big names here, so there's a little bit of Highsmith in there. There's a little bit of Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho. There's a little bit of Play It Again, Sam, the Woody Allen film. There are aspects and little magpie pieces of glittery art which I thieved from much more talented people, and I've gathered it together to create a fictional confection which I hope you will enjoy. It's got wonderful artwork from the pen of Christopher James on the cover, and if you can pre-order a copy of that, I will put a link in the show notes. It's a superb publishing house called Plumeria, who primarily publish DVDs which have gone out of distribution, gone out of circulation, and now they're stretching out into the realm of book publishing. They have done Night Moves by Alan Sharp, and I actually had David Hughes, the publisher, on the pod to talk about that book. The Cooler, I think it's called, is another novel that they have recently published, and I want them to. There's a few titles that I've suggested. I won't say at the moment because there are probably negotiations ongoing in terms of securing the rights, but it's a great idea to be bringing in film adjacent novels, film adjacent books which have been perhaps adapted into films and then since gone out of print, or maybe novelizations that have gone out of print but are considered classics of their type. So I'm really excited to be a part of this venture. I really hope that people support it because it is a small business and it is and the margins are narrow. So, you know, the more people who pre-order, the more people who order, the more people who contribute, the better, and the more things we can do, the more ambitious we can become in pursuing this new idea. It's very niche. It's very based on what we would like to see out there as fans and as enthusiasts, and so, you know, don't leave us hanging, guys. Let's make this thing into reality. If you don't want to buy Connery the novel, then I would very much recommend Night Moves by Alan Sharp as being a really good book, which would also support the publishing house and help us out here, okay? Help us out. It's great. You will be rewarded with the art that we produce as a part of this bargain, absolute bargain. So all I've really got to say is that I wish you all a very happy holidays. I hope that you will continue listening throughout 2026. I will be putting up some repeats of shows that we've had in the past during the festive break so that you don't miss out, and then we'll be back with the regular episodes in January. And if you miss some, you want to go and listen to something else, then there's also Cinema Italia to listen to, and the James Bond Book Club if you like 007, which I'm sure there's some crossover there with our listeners. So happy holidays one and all, and thank you for the conversation.